Well, howdy, y'all, and welcome back to yet another episode of the UnCalled Four, where you can see stupidity being trounced and misinformation being dispelled. Tonight, we're going to talk about climate change, and with us tonight, we have our lovely panelists. We have with us tonight Aimee Hogan. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you. I'm all excited about this one because this is something that I'm really into, climate and weather and things like that. So this is a good thing. So I'm really excited to be here tonight. I hope you're doing well too.
I am. Thank you very much. I had a really wonderful birthday weekend, and I was super excited to share it with you guys, but also share it with Sean this year. So thank you for that. And Miss Vishanti, how are you doing tonight?
Well, I'm enjoying the season finale of America. We still have to get through the post-credits stinger, so I'm waiting for that inevitable twist.
Oh, yes. I think you'll have to wait till just a little bit after November starts.
Okay, but yeah, it's anything like a Marvel movie, there will be a lead into the next,
Exactly.
big production, so...
I'm just waiting for Stan Lee to pop back up.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're super excited to have you here with us again tonight. And we also have Cheese Mondo directing us tonight or producing us tonight. How are you doing, Cheese Mondo?
Oh, absolutely wonderful. First time producing something for somebody else, so it's going to be kind of exciting. Bring it on. It should be a good show.
Awesome. I'm super excited for it as well. Tonight we're going to talk about climate change. So what kind of videos do we have on tap tonight, Cheese?
Oh my goodness. Do you want the general gist or specific titles?
You can read out the specific titles. Give everybody an idea of what they're in for tonight.
Oh, dear me. So there is a video called Climate Change, a Big Fake Hoax. California Wildfires and Climate Change. California wildfires illustrate the consequences of global warming. Global warming isn't real. That's a real special one. And the effect of climate change on wildfire season.
Wow. Those sound awesome. Some more so than others, I think.
There's some real stupid in there.
Yeah, why don't we get right into it and see what we got going on? Let's get into the first video.
So this video is from 1 Minute Debunk.
Awesome.
Some people say that Earth's climate is rapidly changing in a dangerous way, and by some people, I mean all the experts in scientific research relating to ecology, meteorology, climatology, and so on. Other people say it's a hoax, tricking humanity into constructing a clean, beautiful utopia for no reason. And by other people, I mean fossil fuel spokespersons and tinfoil stockholders, the kind of people who are heavily invested in avoiding the truth. As time goes on and the reality of climate change becomes more readily apparent, there will always be those that close their eyes and deny everything. This kind of denial is a rejection of the scientific method and the massive amount of evidence that points to climate change. The human race has many possible futures, and not all of them are particularly nice or lengthy. Each and every one of us, in some small way, helps to steer Spaceship Earth. So let's not crash it into the sun! Let's not set it on fire! We live here!
So that was an interesting video from 1 Minute Debunk. He's done some really good videos in the past, and he does a lot of quick fire 1 minute kind of debunks, and it was a good one to start out with, just to kind of give a brief overview of the hoaxes or around climate change. But let's get into one. Unless anybody else has anything they'd like to add on that one.
Mostly just that there are a unsettlingly large number of people who don't think that climate change is an issue, that don't believe it's caused by people, that think it's just part of the natural cycle of the Earth, don't see why we should change anything. They believe it's some sort of control tactic by the reptilian elite, I guess. Just, it's another brick in the conspiracy pyramid for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just contrarianism too. I've noticed a lot. Well, just because all of these people think it is, I know more than they do. It's fake. Yeah. It's not real. This is what's going on, and it's just crazy.
I don't study meteorology or climatology or any kind of weather patterns or anything, but I know better than them.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme with not just climate change, but all sorts of conspiracies and such.
Dunning-Kruger.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I made average grades in my science class and occasional B, but I'll tell you what, those scientists are just paid shills. They're lying about everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Well, Cheesemondo, what do we got lined up next?
So the next one is how California wildfires illustrate the consequences of climate change.
Awesome. Well, how about we get into that one, I guess?
Okie dokie.
California tonight is home to a record-shattering heat wave and about 24 wildfires currently burning across the state. Nearly 15,000 firefighters are battling steep terrain and tinder-dry conditions as they fight to control the raging infernos. This afternoon, the U.S. Forest Service announced it will temporarily close national forests in the southern and central regions of the state because of the fire risk. More than 2 million acres already scorched this.
Before the video goes on too long, something that people who aren't native to the West Coast might not be aware of is you might be wondering how we are fighting wildfires across the entire West Coast when there's only a limited number of firefighters. And I hear you say, like, well, Vishanti, how are you fighting that many thousands of acres of wildfire if there's only so many firefighters? Well, I'm glad you asked. The answer is inmates. Yes, you heard that correctly. People who are incarcerated will literally be drafted in to be makeshift firefighters. And they're put on the front lines to help tackle these things without receiving the same sort of like formal training and years of experience that actual firefighters are having to go through.
That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Yep, it's pretty shitty. So,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, you could be incarcerated for some tiny little thing, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, strap on this gear. You're going to go tackle a wildfire. Good luck. You know, that's... Yeah, it's pretty awful. So
that is.
There's a lot of there were a lot of viral tweets and photos that went around about a month ago when some of this really started kicking off of just inmates trying to show like what it's like to be doing that sort of work, and it's hard. It's really hard to watch. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine. I like I said, I wasn't aware of that, but it's good to bring that to people's attention as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not just, you know, heroic firefighters going out on the front lines and, you know, digging trenches and shooting water at stuff and whatever. It's average people. It's not cool.
No, definitely not. Well, thank you for bringing that up. I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we continue on then?
Yeah.
All right.
Here in California, record-breaking swaths of land burning under record-breaking temperatures. Governor Gavin Newsom last night declared a state of emergency in 5 counties as some 20 fire conglomerates smolder across the state. The largest fire alone, Fresno's Creek Fire, has burned over 73,000 acres. A caravan of Labor Day weekend campers were surrounded by flames and forced to flee to a nearby lake. Sisters Caitlin and Mackenzie Meek escaped the fire's path.
One minute you're just sitting at camp, and then the next you're driving through flames, trying to save everything.
Backpacker Juliana Park documented her drive out of Sierra National Forest, the road lined with flames.
Getting rescued right now.
Rescue teams deployed to Fresno have already airlifted out more than 200 trapped campers.
The crews were absolutely ecstatic when they came off the helicopters.
Colonel David Hall of the California Army National Guard.
All of the individuals that they rescued were greeting the crew members with hugs as they were boarding onto the helicopter, and then again after getting off the helicopter, a lot of high fives.
Several fires still burn completely uncontained, and state excessive heat warnings are in effect until tonight. Officials warn the worst may be yet to come. Temperatures in Los Angeles County reached a record high of 121 degrees yesterday. While it's cooler there today, temperatures inland are expected to top 100 degrees. For a closer look at what's behind that heat wave and what's fueling these fires, I'm joined by Leah Stokes. She's a professor and researcher on climate, energy, and political policy at the University.
Again, just to try to break it up a little bit. Yeah, the heat wave didn't help.
No, absolutely.
I mean, and it's really hard because people forget how big California is sometimes. And a huge portion of the land out on the West Coast in general, even from like Canada down, is just forest. Old as shit forest. Trees everywhere. And there's scrub, like desert scrub that's really dry. And, you know, you have heat wave plus winds plus a fire, and it's just kindling, you know?
Yeah.
So all it takes is a little bit of wind, and suddenly a tiny little campfire that you thought was completely under control is like burning half the state down.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Plus oh, sorry. I was just going to say, plus that ongoing drought you guys have been having too. It's been incredible.
Yeah, like the drought isn't as bad as it was like in the early 2010s, but it's still, we don't get a lot of rain until the wintertime. Wintertime is our rainy season, and we've still got another month or two yet before that starts to kick off. So you're putting all of these different factors together, and on top of all of that, we're still having a pandemic. So that's complicating things even further when you're trying to get people in and out of zones that might be threatened, or you're trying to get evacuations going or whatnot. And honestly, it's not just nerve-wracking, it's kind of scary. So
it is scary. That's awful. Wow.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, we don't really get anything like that out here, you know, even if there is some sort of, you know, fire, it's usually very quickly contained and easily, you know, taken care of. But I can't imagine living like that out there.
And that's another thing that I'm sure the scientist is going to go into here in a second. But we would joke about things out here in Southern California. We'd be like, oh, you know, there are seasons. There's pilot season. There's fire season. There's, you know, and the thing is, their fire season is not supposed to be a thing. That's climate change. So it's not normal. Even though we're joking about it, it's not normal. It's not supposed to be
absolutely. Like it's
every single year.
It's the new normal, but it shouldn't be.
Exactly. But yeah, she'll probably go into that here in a second.
All right. Well, if anybody else wants to say anything, unless you do, we can continue on, I suppose.
California's Santa Barbara. She joins us this holiday from Ontario, Canada. Leah Stokes, welcome to the NewsHour. Let's start with that warning. Why is it that authorities believe that this fire season could get even worse soon?
Well, unfortunately, climate change is happening right now in California, and we've been lengthening the fire season quite considerably as we warm up the planet. In California, our fire season is now 2.5 months longer than it used to be, which means that people are at risk all the time. And as you mentioned, we're seeing record heat waves, not just in Los Angeles County, but also in Santa Barbara County, San Luis Obispo County, and all of that heat is really increasing risk for fires.
Now, you mentioned climate change, of course. How do we know that that connection is there? Because we should mention some of the activities that spark the fires are, in fact, just related to human behavior. There was one fire started by a gender reveal party in which someone used a smoke machine that sparked a fire. So explain that connection to us.
Yes, it is true, of course, that we make decisions in our daily lives, such as the people who decided to have that gender reveal party. But, it becomes so much more risky to actually have that spark light a fire under climate change. So we know because of research from scientists that we have 500% more risk for wildfires during this climate changed world than we would have before. And that's because it's really hot and dry, because we have had droughts. And of course, that drought, which is caused by climate change, has led to a lot of vegetation dying, meaning there's a lot of brush lying around that can easily light up. And a little spark from a gender reveal party or whatever it is can end up being a massive inferno very quickly. So of course, people need to be careful and be held accountable when they light fires. But the fact is, climate change is the real culprit behind what we're seeing right now.
We should mention, too, California's fire record goes back to 1932, but the 10 biggest fires on record there have all happened after 2000. Should we expect that trend to continue?
Unfortunately, we should. I've only lived in California for 5 years, and I've already been evacuated from my home for weeks on end. And what
All right, can we
scientists are
pause there
telling
for a
us—
sec? So I'm curious, maybe for Vishanti here, just because I don't have as much experience with this sort of thing. How much of at least this fire season do you feel is from man-made errors versus climate change?
It's hard to separate them out from each other because there's such a correlative relationship between the two, because the climate in this area has been affected by human actions, like the fossil fuel pollution, they talk about the drought. It's causing a lot of vegetation to die, and then that's just kindling. So that stage is already set for when someone makes a really shitty ass decision to blow up a smoke machine and reveal the gender of their child and shoot themselves in the nuts while they're doing it. So
whatever happened to just a cape?
God. And then, so you've got somebody who's being an idiot that sets off a chain of events that have just been primed to go into the worst outcome possible. And thousands of acres are destroyed, millions of dollars of damage to homes, occurs, and property, and people have to be evacuated from their houses because some dipshit wanted to tell you what their kids' genitals are going to look like.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I can see that. My thought on it was the same kind of an idea where it kind of goes hand in hand. Like climate change have made the conditions more right for fires. And then these idiots doing things are causing the fires that are now getting out of control because of climate change.
Yeah, I mean, it's the terrain around you is basically just a bunch of old newspaper.
Right.
And you throw your cigarette down and not think about it, or you start a small campfire or set off a firework or something, and then it's just it's off to the races. Yeah, it's pretty
absolutely terrible. It is.
And I'm super concerned about what's going to happen when the Santa Ana winds kick up, because those things, those winds don't fuck around. Literally, they don't. And we can have gusts of up to 40 to 60 miles an hour that can hit in the middle of the wintertime and makes the temperature spike to like 80. And you combine that with dry tinder or any kind of fire situation, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeez, that sounds awful.
Yeah, I'm not excited for what's going to be coming, and especially when she was talking about how it's going to get worse because we're not doing fuck all about it.
Yeah.
It's a conspiracy, or it's the Democrat hoax, or whatever they're calling it.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that you can think of that could be done, maybe like an immediate fix to kind of help alleviate things, or?
I mean, I'm not really qualified to make that kind of a call.
Yeah.
Selfishly, I want to tell people to stop setting off incendiary devices.
Right.
It's not that big of a deal to have a campfire right now. It's not that big of a deal to set off a smoke machine or light a firework or whatever the hell.
You don't need to have a bonfire or roast marshmallows.
Yeah, really. Just like, I know that we're having a tough time in 2020. It does suck. But like, if you look at the video from July 4th, and you pan across the downtown LA skyline, it literally looked like the beginning of Blade Runner with all the fucking explosions going off everywhere.
Jeez, yeah. I didn't think about that, but it did.
It did, and someone actually set that to the Blade Runner intro. It was pretty great. So,
oh, jeez.
yeah. I mean, I was impressed and disappointed at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Disappointed that they had to.
Yeah, exactly. And then when the fires really started to get going last month, somebody took the photography of all the orange skies and just the smoke everywhere, and were showing that it looked like the new Blade Runner 2049. I was like, guys, we gotta stop. Stop.
Yeah.
And I know 2020, like you said, 2020 is hard and everybody's been having a hard time with it, but do they really need to be setting this stuff off? You know?
Yeah, like, come on, there's so many other outlets that you could use to have some fun or whatever, you know?
Right.
Dude,
and
we're
you
Americans,
have to be
though. We're just like, no, I want to do it my way.
my freedom.
My freedoms.
Nurka. Yeah. No. Well, it's funny how people, when crises like this happen, how little they think of anybody else at all. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't even think of the consequences. I'm just going to set fire to something that's like a tinderbox, you know? It's like,
yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's even out of control where I am. I'm being careful.
Yeah. Well, even like with with COVID stuff and just pretty much everything, people mainly think about themselves, and that's the problem. I'm not worried about it. It's I'm young and healthy. It won't affect me. Okay, but how about the other people that you could be infecting that maybe might not be so lucky? It's the same thing with so many different things. People only want to think about themselves and not think about the greater good.
That's
right.
One of the biggest things that's made 2020 so shitty is that we've really hit the pinnacle of what, American individualism should not be.
Right.
It's the logical conclusion of I'm a do me, I got mine. It's literally gotten to the point where it's contributing to a wildfire scenario. It's contributing to the spread of a deadly pandemic. It's, it's endangering lives on multiple fronts.
Yep.
Well, that's exactly it. And it's really sad that it's come to this. Sad that we have to learn the lesson this hard, It's like
Yeah. No Icarus, no barbecues. Fire bad.
All right. Well, shall we continue on then and see what else there is?
Yeah, just an aside, if you guys haven't watched the South Park Pandemic special, it's so good.
Also, just real quick, I do want to just mention that we had PHDTony hop on in. He was our guest for the evening, just running a little bit late, but that's always all right. It's good to see you here, PHDTony. How are you doing tonight?
Yay!
I am very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Sorry I'm late.
Of course.
No,
that's quite all right. All right.
I was Tony. I am so hungover from last night. Oh, buddy, I drank 2/3 of a bottle of wine last night on the NASA Black Site stream and hated myself this morning.
Oh, jeez.
It's always something you enjoy while it's happening and you regret the day after.
Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
It did. You seemed to need it to cope with that football game. Let's just leave it.
God. I mean, the running joke right now is, hey, when's the Auburn-Georgia game? So yeah, I've been dragging all day, but I've hydrated and made sure to eat, so I'm here.
Excellent.
All right. Well, Cheesemondo, should we continue on then with our video?
Yep, let's do it.
is that we are entering a period of mega fires where the scale of burning is just beyond what we've seen before. So as you mentioned, we're seeing really large fires, and there isn't any reason to believe that that will stop because we are not taking the climate crisis seriously and we are not reducing fossil fuel emissions around the world. So California really is a canary in the coal mine here, and we need to be waking up. And just as the bird was dying from coal, we too are dying from burning coal, oil, and fossil gas.
We should mention also we are mid-fire season now. Are there steps that residents or local authorities, state authorities can be taking to mitigate damage for the rest of the season and prepare for next year?
Absolutely. You know, our firefighters and our cities are doing the best that they can. They do all kinds of things like suggest that residents make small retrofits to their home that can dramatically reduce fire risk. They do things like create fuel breaks, which sometimes are controversial for good reason. So people are trying, but you know, the really big solution here is taking on the climate crisis. And that means that we need new leadership, particularly in Washington. We need somebody who actually believes that climate change is real. And unfortunately, we don't have that right now.
That is Leah Stokes from the University of California, Santa Barbara, joining us tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on.
%.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Dude, start 9 fires. Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane.
Cool.
Oh boy. Well, that was definitely eye-opening to say the least.
Yeah, there is.
Frustrating.
So there earlier this year, 2000 for Australians, 2000 started with quite extensive bushfires, and actually it was the first time in my life I had to wear a mask going outside, and indeed sometimes inside, because the smoke got that bad. And there was an attempt to blame the Greens, the attempt to blame environmentalists for not having extensive enough, for not permitting extensive enough fire breaks to be carved through some of the areas affected. The reality is that it wouldn't have mattered. The reality is that the fires were just so large that the standard of fire breaks just isn't up to it. They'll leap those fairly easily. So there's an attempt to sort of distort the debate when it does come up into, well, you guys are to blame because we could have handled this if you'd let us do load reduction properly, or let us install fire breaks or what have you. And it's simply not true. It's simply it fails to meet with the reality, which is that actually there is less time in the year during which fire breaks can be constructed. You need to do it. Sort of at the beginning of spring, before the height of summer, because you do it before spring, then during spring there'll just be new growth that'll just populate the area that you're trying to clear. So you kind of need to do it deep enough into spring that you're getting rid of the growth that's there, but not so late that you miss the opportunity, and not so early that you allow regrowth. But that window is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So there's less preparation that the fire services can actually do. All of this, it's all about forest maintenance and that sort of thing. No, it's not. It's just the climate is just becoming unsuitable for the strategies we used to have in place to be effective. They're no longer working.
Yeah. God, those brush fires, it honestly feels like that was 3 years ago in 2020 time.
Yeah,
Not
that's
in
right.
January,
Yes, yeah. It's been an eventful year. Let's just put it that way.
For sure.
That's an understatement.
It has been one hell of a year for sure.
You remember that that bot account that wasn't really a bot account, the horse ebooks account? I remember
something about that, yeah.
My favorite tweet by them ever was, everything happens so much.
Yes, that's a pretty accurate statement. It just seems
So
to
that's
have.
2020. Everything happens so much.
I'm kind of reminded of the what's the movie about the rock band where they have the amplifiers, Spinal Tap, the amplifiers that go up to 11. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and 2020 just seems to have gone up to 12. But yeah.
Yeah.
It is nice to see somebody in the public forum who knows what they're talking about as far as climate change is concerned.
An actual scientist. Can you believe it?
An actual scientist, yeah. It'd be nice to hear more of those.
Because we're damn sure not getting it from our government.
Yeah. Oh, boy. All right. Well, Chismondo, what do we have lined up next?
Well, the next one is from a channel called All American. And the title of this one is Global Warming Isn't Real. Here is why.
Oh, dear.
Oh, buddy.
Oh.
Good thing I drank all my wine last night.
Yeah. I mean, I
can already
suppose
tell
we can get into it.
this person looks absolutely qualified to comment on this.
Oh, 100%. Yep. Oh, dear. All right. Well, let's get into it then, shall we?
Hello. Welcome to the All-American Eagle Show. Today, I want to tell you guys about global warming. So, this guy comes along, famous politician, I'm sure y'all know him, goes by the name of Al Gore. Now, I did a little research on Al Gore, and it turns out that Al Gore, I think he cheated on his wife.
What?
On his wife. Let's see what the first thing.
What does that have to do with anything?
It says Al Gore cheats with Larry David's ex, someone else's ex-wife. Now.
Okay. Relevant how?
What does that have to do with shit?
Has cheated on someone's wife? I mean, for real. He is a famous politician looking for money. Makes the world go round. Basically,
boy, if she has a problem with Al Gore cheating on his wife, then she really is gonna hate the current guy in the White House.
Global warming is basically saying that we as a species are overusing energy, like we're using too much energy, and it's causing all the radiation and waves and everything to go up north and eat at the ozone layer and melt the ice caps. If the ice caps melt, sea levels are going to rise. There's going to be a hole in the ozone layer. Polar bears are going to start dying and stuff like that. Well, first of all,
please pause.
Yeah,
please
let's
pause.
pause for a sec.
Okay, so what she started with, as everybody caught, was just an ad hominem fallacy. This is the textbook definition. This person has attributes that I don't like here. Therefore, this person is bad, and everything they say is false. No, the hole in the ozone layer is not related to the process of global warming, and it is simply idiotic to suggest that it is, based on a complete ignorance of all science. Basically, it's a result of all environmentalism is bad. Actually, the ozone hole is a perfect example of how environmentalism, how environmental activism can work, right? We found a problem, we worked out what the solution was, we implemented the solution, and now things are recovering. See how that works? And did democracy fail? Has capitalism crashed into a burning fireball? No, it hasn't. Everybody's going on.
Sorry, I had something in my throat.
Yeah.
Well, one
no,
thing
I
I
think
can say. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I was just going to say one thing that has failed that she did not mention was the education system. Because if she thinks because a non sequitur like Al Gore had an affair with some guy's ex-wife, who cares? The climate change isn't real because of that. That means the educational system has failed, not so much any other systems that we have right now, although they could, because we're not paying attention enough to climate change or doing enough to, to either mitigate it or stop it.
Yeah, and I mean, in her mind, she probably thinks that she's saying he's not credible because he's committed an infidelity. Like, what? I don't see how cheating with someone's wife makes you not credible on science, but okay. But she's talking about stuff as if she literally only read shit that came out in the 90s. Because I remember growing up and going through school and going to all of these little, they weren't webinars then, but listening to people talk about the ozone hole and how like big of a deal it was and the radiation and all this other shit that was going down. And we really need to cut back our CFCs and all that stuff. And it's repaired itself since then, but she's obviously has not got with the times. Yeah. So someone in the side chat was like, it's ageist to assume that she's not just winding you up. At her age, I'd have pretended to believe that Nickelback doesn't suck if I thought there were lulls in it. She doesn't give the energy off that she's just a Poe. Like, she seems to be legitimately on board with whatever she's saying. Right. I could be completely wrong. She might throw a curveball at us in the last 20 seconds of the video. Not going to get my hopes up.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Can I grab that super chat real quick?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, please.
Don Giovanni for $2. Call/email your reps. Demand carbon pricing /taxes.
That's right.
Do not send one ever again, mister.
No. You can send super chat.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Don.
You know what, though? She's not going to mention this in her rant, I assume, but a huge contributor to burning fossil fuels are people taking private planes. And those people already don't pay taxes. Adding another one, probably not going to affect them, but what do I know?
I just want to step in here. So actually, air transport, aircraft contribute about 3% of our total global carbon dioxide emissions. So the vast majority comes from just cars, right? And electricity generation. That's where the majority of damage is done. It may never be the case that air travel gets to be environmentally friendly. The concentration, you need really, really concentrated energy in order to have air travel. It may not ever be the case that there's an alternative to air fuel. So if we want to travel by air, we may have to accept that this is part of our future. It's up in the air a little bit.
I thought Nikola Tesla had free energy, perpetual motion, water running engines, solar death ray machines, and we can use those, but the government took all his plans.
Yeah, yep. It's nice to know that they still have phones in mental health wards. Thank you. There is an element to which people flying around. People should really consider whether or not private air travel is necessary or worthwhile. And it should be significantly reduced, I think, from what it is. That being said, of course, with the advent of COVID, suddenly there's yet another incentive for wealthy people to not want to travel on commercial air services.
You mean mingle with the unwashed masses?
To say that it does not increase your chance of infection would be false, I'm afraid. It's now an economic consideration. There's no denying it. But I do think
I can't fly with the peasants.
there you go. GPS says, who told you about my death rate? Okay. Sorry, I stole that.
All right. Well, shall we continue on and see what else she's got to say?
I don't know. We got 2 super chats.
We did get some super chats. Let's take care of those first, please.
Oh, why is the snark doing that?
Yeah, he does, because they like to. Don't eat your hair, dear. Read the super chat, honey.
The snark for £5 said €5? £5.
€5.
€5 said, I quietly sneaked in the back doors to go and watch the Uncalled Four / then never gamble, never bluff. Stop slashing. I think they really know their stuff.
Thank you very much.
Why sending super chats to Snark?
They like
that's a poem, man.
Put him down.
No, just read. Yeah.
GPS for $2 said, who told you about my death rays? They are fakes. Hashtag stop saying fake, start saying real. Add that hashtag to it.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. I appreciate it. All righty. Well, then with that, let's play some more there, Cheesemondo.
Species cannot do that. We cannot just... First of all, why in the world would they go up north? I mean, why not the Tropic of Cancer? Why would it be the North and South, the North Pole? I mean, what's the thinking? There is none. There's no thinking. It's just nonsense. And
ding, 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 ding.
You see those commercials where there's a polar bear walking stranded on like a little piece of ice? You've seen that. I'm sure you've seen it. That's a lie. Pack ice is part of a polar bear's natural life. That's like basically where they, hold their ground. Well, in the summertime, ice melts. It's 3rd grade science. Well,
which
in the
she
summertime,
didn't pass.
the ice melts, and there are a whole bunch of icebergs everywhere, where the polar bears go onto and they hunt seals, baby seals, and that are in the ice, and swimming is part of mother polar bears teach their cubs how to swim at a really, really young age so that they know how to, because it's part of catching their their dinner. That's just what they do. It's natural. It's not because of global warming. So that's the second thing. Third thing, I'm not saying that the ozone layer isn't leaving. I'm just saying that it's not because of us. I'm just saying that we overuse energy. And I'm not saying you should leave your computer and your lamp on all night long, but because you shouldn't. I'm just saying that it's not us that are doing it. It's
Well, it's not the fucking polar bears using light bulbs.
Global warming. Right before your eyes. Sick, right? No.
God, she's
no.
Fucking idiot.
It's just like we shouldn't and everything, but this whole planet naturally heats up and cools down. The Ice Age and the Melting Age. It's been going on for
melting
millions of years. Okay, it's what makes it. That's what just happens because the Earth tilts back and forth and goes around the sun, and
tilting and going
all around the sun like that. It happens over millions and millions and millions of years, and
no, it doesn't happen over millions of years. The Earth axis wobble is a few thousand years, but cool, nice try.
Because of CO2 and spray paint and everything. But it's not because of that lamp over there. Okay, no. The reason Al Gore made this up is for people to make donations and everything.
He made it up
to give him money.
Yeah.
That he can use for something else. Because he's lying. Because all he wants is your money because he's
Yes,
Al Gore.
I'm
I don't know
giving
what he
him
looks like
money
for.
by not.
And
What?
That's pretty much it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a natural
Al
part.
Gore made it
Solid
up.
case
Arcs
there,
used to rise
Janet.
lower and rise lower and rise lower. Just what happens.
Wow.
And I'm sorry
This
if
is
you don't like
painful.
that, but it's not really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
let's just cut her off
That's it.
before the torrent of ignorance
Yeah, I think
becomes
that's just
too
about
much
Yeah,
to swim
no,
against. So, the mechanism, obviously the mechanism by which the ozone hole was generated is actually really, really cool. There's like 6 steps involved in it. You need to supercool the air in the darkness, and then you need to suddenly reintroduce light, and there's all sorts of really cool steps in it. But it's got nothing to do with greenhouse gas emissions. And she seems to not understand the link between electrical appliances and greenhouse gas emissions, right? That seems to be a huge impediment. She just doesn't see that using power creates greenhouse gas emissions. Greenhouse gas emissions increase temperature.
Where does she think all of the electricity is coming from?
Yeah.
She
goes on about natural cycles, right? She's talking about the Milankovitch-Kroll cycles, the orbital perturbations induced by gravitational attraction due to the gas giants in the solar system. And these things, as you say, they work over timescales of between 4 and 23,000 years. So they cannot be responsible for an increase on a timescale of 150 years, which is what we're seeing now. The other aspect of this that she's talking about the last glacial cycle, right? So Earth, 20,000 years ago, Earth was in the middle of a massive glaciation event. Canada was covered by an ice sheet that was more than 4,000 kilometers thick in large portions. But the planet, the mean surface temperature of the planet was only something like 4 degrees cooler than it is now. That's all there was. It was 4 degrees of mean surface temperature difference. We're looking at something like 2 to 5 degrees difference in the other direction in the course of 200 years. It's actually a really dramatic change. It doesn't sound like much because, temperature is going to change by the course of 20 degrees Celsius throughout a day, let alone throughout a year. But actually, that sort of
4 degrees on a global scale is huge.
4 degrees on a global scale is huge, and we're looking at it happening very, very fast with stressed ecosystems that don't have the capacity to migrate anymore, that are already that have already been severely impacted by humans. And their chances of adapting or migrating or adjusting to this are negligible. So we've already seen it. Our insect population has dropped by 80% in the past 30 years. A survey of 21,000 different wildlife populations has shown an average of 68% decline in wildlife numbers. And
the bees, which are massive pollinators.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's we are taking an enormous risk, and it's not. Everybody talks like human greenhouse gas emissions are the only game in town. And they are the dominant game. But the fact is that there are potential feedbacks. One of those feedbacks, for instance, being thawing of Siberian permafrost and the release of methane from there. The warming of the oceans and the release of ocean floor methane deposits, what are called clathrates. Deforestation causes a change in surface albedo and releases more carbon dioxide in large bursts. These forest fires aren't, they're releasing carbon dioxide in large quantities. There's ice sheet collapse, et cetera, et cetera. There are huge feedbacks out there, and those are just the ones we're aware of. There may be feedback mechanisms that modern science just doesn't know about it. So it's like we're speeding through a minefield towards a brick wall, and nobody's interested in doing anything about it. It's just, it's a really bizarre experience from a scientific point of view.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just a money-making ploy, so it's not really
Al Gore made it up.
for money, which we're all definitely giving him by driving electric cars.
Well, that's the other side of this argument, and I have to admit that I shared some of this perception. I kind of thought of the idea that greenhouse gases were a serious problem was a fairly recent scientific discovery, and it turns out and eventually I decided that I had to study this in detail, and when I did, I discovered that actually the idea of greenhouse gas forcing is older than relativity.
Wow.
The basic science here is older than evolution. It's been around for a long time. It's just that for the majority of its lifespan, the atmospheric physicists and climate scientists of the day didn't accept it. They thought that it couldn't happen for various reasons. But as our data improved and as our understanding of the physical systems involved improved, it became more and more viable until in the 1950s we started when we started having reliable carbon dioxide observations. We were able to demonstrate that this is actually a thing, and so climate science, the radiative forcing, greenhouse gas emissions, and that sort of thing, has actually been destruction tested. Every scientific authority on the planet has discredited this and tried to destroy it for at least 60 years, and it came through because all of the data and all of the observations validated it. So the idea that it's just that Al Gore threw it up and everybody has just accepted it, complete misunderstanding of the scientific history here.
Very interesting for sure. All right. Well, Cheesemondo, what was our next video in the lineup?
Okay, so the next one is from a channel called Climate Adam, and the title is California Wildfires and Climate Change.
All right. So it's kind of similar to the one previously that we watched, or at least maybe
Climate Adam is really good. So.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's take a look and see what he's got to say.
Right now, California is on fire. The Kincaid fire has forced some 200,000 people from their homes and destroyed many buildings in its wake, as well as disrupting lives in all sorts of ways. This has been happening at the same time as the Getty fire has been affecting people in LA, and comes hot on the heels of 2018's record-breaking Camp Fire, which destroyed many thousands of homes in California. But what are the lessons from climate change? Well, we can't say that climate change causes these fires. After all, there are all sorts of causes, from the natural to the very human mismanagement of the situations. But climate change certainly plays a role by providing fuel for the fire. It does this with hot, dry conditions. All of this has led to a 5-fold increase in the area of California that burns each year since the 1970s. But understanding climate change doesn't just help us understand the fire. Understanding the fire helps us understand climate change, specifically what happens when disaster hits. We see that the responses are panicked, challenging, even though California is the richest state in the world's richest nation. And parts of California are insanely rich. The LA Times quoted one person evacuating who was faced with an unspeakable dilemma. "I have to figure out what to do with my Ferrari," he said. "I was going to try and do a Californian accent, but it's in everyone's interest that I don't do that. But just because California is wealthy, it doesn't mean all Californians are wealthy. In fact, many workers like housekeepers and gardeners still showed up for work in evacuated areas because they were scared of losing their wages. When disaster like this hits, think about the most vulnerable people in society. That includes people who are homeless, who are unwell, people who have nowhere and nobody to turn to. But the situation has been made even harder, with planned power outages affecting some 1 million customers. These outages have been planned by energy.
I don't know if he's going to mention this, but that is a really important thing that a lot of people outside the state may not be aware of. Also, is there are a few big power companies here, like Edison, PG&E, Yes Energy. There's a few others, like LADWP is not that big compared to the other ones. But there's infrastructure related to these power companies. There's, miles and miles and miles of wires and cables and all sorts of other things. And famously, PG&E was faced with a situation where the degradation of their equipment and their lack of maintenance, like proper routine maintenance on their infrastructure, was a huge contributing factor to outbreaks of wildfires. And in order to kind of try and cover their ass for it, they were like, well, we're going to plan some shutoffs. And obviously that not only is it just a mild inconvenience for some people, but if you don't have electricity, you can't keep your food fresh. People won't have life support if they're in a hospital. I know there's generators, but bear with me. And this is still an ongoing issue that people are bringing up is, why won't you repair your infrastructure? Why won't you fix degradation in your cable lines and your towers and your power grids and all of your stations or whatever, so that this isn't a problem again? It's still happening. People are still talking about this. We're still trying to bring it up and be like, hey, get your shit together so that you don't have to just randomly cut off the power for people. Yeah, and that's another thing is Edison runs these ads here every summer. What is a planned power outage? When wildfire risk is high, we blah, 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 blah. And it's just, we didn't have to get to this point. A lot of human negligence brought us here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point.
Fun, but not fun facts.
Yes. Well, learning is always fun anyway, but.
Think of the Ferraris.
Oh boy. All right. Should we continue on then? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm interested in what he's got to say.
All right. Let's continue on then, Cheesemondo. Please.
Provider PG&E to try and avoid sparking more wildfires. But the company has sparked a lot of criticism, with many saying that they should have planned better to avoid these power outages and wildfires rather than just cutting the power for many. This lack of power is just making things even harder. It's not only not being able to charge things like mobile phones, it's also not being able to run air purifiers or vital medical equipment. Lots of people are getting around this by, understandably, purchasing private generators, but not everyone can afford these. And when they run, they're just going to make their air quality worse and lead to more climate change. All of this paints a picture of how climate change will affect us. People often say to me when I talk about climate change that there's no need to stop it, that we can adapt. And to that I say, who? Who can adapt? Climate change-related disasters will disrupt lives. But what if your life is already disrupted? What if you're already struggling to survive, and then disaster hits? And remember, this is in California, in America. What happens when climate change hits in a poorer part of the world? You see, climate change does affect all of us, but climate change does not affect all of us equally. I want to end on a more positive note, and what more positive story is there than the explosion of the youth climate movement in 2019? One of the young people leading the climate strikes in America is New Yorker Alexandria Villasenor, and wildfires play a vital part of her story.
And I was visiting family in California when the Paradise Fire broke out, and the air quality was so bad and I have asthma, I had to fly back to New York early. It's like, what is going on? When I came back to New York, I was upset about California. I was mad.
Alexandria is now doing this. So for you, hearing about or maybe even experiencing climate-related disasters, what are you going to do to limit climate change and to protect everyone. If you want to understand the link between extreme weather and climate change, then make sure to watch my previous video over here. And if you have any climate change questions of your own, leave them in the comments below.
All right. Well, I mean, I think he put it very well.
Mhm.
You know, kind of really got into some of the meat and potatoes of it. But do you guys have any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think he always puts together quite sound arguments, and he gets into the details of it. There's a lot. This is one, and he touches on a number of things that that Vishanti was discussing. You know, our entire infrastructure needs some level of redesign and reappraisal, and that's going to be expensive. And there's another side in terms of social equality, in the sense that in a broader macroeconomic setting, what has happened is that the advanced economies of the world have stolen all of the opportunities the world ever had for greenhouse gas emission. And now the poorer economies of the world cannot emit greenhouse gases without inviting climate disaster. So now the advanced cultures of the world are wealthy enough that they can start addressing the problem, but the developing economies aren't. So either we allow them to emit carbon, or we impose regulations on them. But if we impose regulations on them, it's up to the advanced economies of the world to actually support them and pay the cost of getting to a greenhouse gas-free power base, because we profited by just emitting willy-nilly.
But that sounds like socialism.
It does. It sounds to me like taking responsibility. The reality is that there was a cost associated with greenhouse gas emissions the entire time, and we just haven't been paying it. And now the bill is due. And so yeah, I understand. I'm sorry. I'm just responding deadpan to your interjections, but yeah, that's exactly the response that you'll get from that you will get from the right, and it's one of the reasons why there is so much skepticism about climate science, is that they think that the solutions are socialist and therefore bad. In which case, the science must be wrong, because socialism is never the right answer. It's never the right answer. It's never the right answer to tax somebody. Therefore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's yet another prong on the tree, prong or branch on the tree of just individualism gone haywire. You know?
Yeah.
Someone's like, well, I mean, our country's doing fine. Screw this other country. If we're polluting and they reap the negative benefits, then screw them. And it's like people, they were mentioning the asthma that the young lady had, and the quality of the air was impacting her and affecting her, triggering her asthma reaction. So imagine all the people that aren't financially stable enough to just go out and get their, you know, ventilators or breathing machines or oxygen supplies on top of what's happening during a pandemic, which is literally also impacting people's ability to breathe. This is a snowballing issue. It's all connected. And we're sitting here having conversations about who's going to pay for it. And I'm like, people are dying.
Yeah.
Who gives a fuck about your stupid budget? Do you want to save lives or not? But that's must be really simplistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really well said. I don't have a whole lot to add. Aimee, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Not really, no. It's just she covered it all pretty much.
Yeah.
Especially with the budget thing. Yeah, screw your budget. What about human lives? That's vastly more important than whether the budget is balanced or whether or not, you know, we can cut taxes or not. That's all fine and dandy, but humans, people, hello.
We had leadership this spring and summer saying, well, your grandma's just going to have to die for the Dow Jones.
Yeah.
So this is not
insane.
Surprising that they're like, well, I just don't think we can fit it into the budget this year. I'm sorry.
People are just going to have to die. Sorry.
Sorry, people die all the time. It's just whatever.
Yeah. I actually,
mine. You don't have yours.
I read something on I forget, I think it was probably Twitter, but it was about COVID again, of course, but it's the same kind of an idea where somebody said something about how an 80-year-old person dying is not the same as a 30-year-old something dying, because the 80-year-old was going to die anyway. It's you don't know that, and who are you to make that decision and think that it's okay based on that? It's not okay. And it's the same kind of an idea. Well, they're from a third world country. They might die anyway. Okay, well, that's not acceptable.
You get hit by a bus tomorrow. I mean,
right.
What do you mean you're going to die anyway? Everyone's going to die. It's not your decision to make.
Exactly.
That's so dumb. What's the threshold for, your life doesn't matter anymore? Is it
when are you expendable?
70, 80, 85? Yeah.
I actually have an answer for that question. Mm-hmm. I remember going to a cinema to see The Lion King, and somebody had taken their 4-year-old to see this, and it gets to the point where Mufasa gets killed, right? And there's this 4-year-old going, desperately trying to rationalize this. Well, it was okay because he was old. He was desperately trying. It was desperate. This 4-year-old talking out loud, desperately trying to find a worldview in which it was okay that this happened, and it was kind of heartbreaking. Perhaps the wrong kids movie, but according to the 4-year-old, I think anybody over the age of 12 is pretty much expendable. That's really old.
I mean, I remember being, in middle school and thinking, I'm never going to make it to my 20s. That's old. And now I'm like, sweet summer child.
Yeah. Oh, boy. All right. Well, I think we had one more video. Is that correct, Cheesemondo?
Yep, this one is the last video. It's from NBC, and the title of this one is How Climate Change Makes Wildfire Season a Constant Reality.
All right. Well, let's get it up and running then, can we please?
81-year-old Dr. Glenn Benjamin appears to be in constant conflict with California's most historic fires. 2 years ago,
we were absolutely square in the middle of the Tubbs fire.
Last year,
the Mendocino Complex fire.
And this year.
Guess it was my turn to get caught. I lost this and my main ranch.
Hey, bud, time to go.
In California, fire season is no longer just a season, it's constant. The state's deadliest fire, as well as the most expensive and largest fire, both occurred last year. Records don't last long here. This year, winds inside the Kincaid fire clocked in at more than 90 miles an hour.
We packed up our house and our son. And
Aimee Head and Marshall Tuberville have been battling these fires for more than 2 decades. As the climate changes, so too do the fires.
We're seeing 100,000-acre fires multiple times a year sometimes. It's much different from when I started 20-something years ago.
What does the power shutting off do to affect your ability to fight these fires?
At the home level, it affects electric gates, garage doors, any other thing that people need power for.
PG&E is expected to cut power to more than 800,000 customers.
We don't have power. Folks in rural areas don't have water.
I can't help but think maybe it's an overreaction.
PG&E says warm and windy conditions create higher risk of its equipment sparking a fire.
Well, that's very frustrating, and I just think there's got to be a better way.
PG&E as we know it cannot persist and continue.
The search for culpability is a visceral.
Thank you. Yeah, it just goes back to, shutting the power off. It seems like such a a ridiculous attempt to try to fix things or mitigate things. You know, it's going to do more good, more harm rather than good.
It really honestly was the end result of a lot of protracted negligence on their part. They weren't repairing a lot of their technology and infrastructure, and suddenly it's, you know, vulnerable to fire damage or even sparking fires, and they're like, well, we're just going to cut off the power, and everyone's like, why didn't you just fix it when you knew it was broken? Because it costs money.
Yeah, it's like when it's too late and you trying to, you know, put some, you know, aloe gel on some, you know, 3rd-degree burns kind of thing.
I mean, the big story is like 2018, like they keep talking about like the campfire and the Paradise Fire and all the other fires. It's hard for me to keep them straight because there's so many, but it was PG&E's utility line that caused that big ass fire that destroyed a bunch of like land and property, and a bunch of people like got killed. And like this year, actually, they were charged with like manslaughter, I think, like 80 something counts of manslaughter. Jeez. So yeah, and it's That's
crazy.
Fucking awful. And I think I pulled up the New York Times article on it, and 23,000 men and women of PGE to take responsibility for the fire that killed people. 84 people were killed in 2018. And they were fined $3.5 million.
Wow.
So, yeah, they repeatedly failed to maintain a transmission line that broke from a nearly 100-year-old tower, even though it cut through a forested and mountainous area known to experience strong winds. So, good job. Good job.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's
well, and this is one of the things that sort of actually confounds me about the modern right-wing movement, and they call themselves conservatives, but I think that that's really a bad name. Conservatives
don't anything.
Well, conservatives understand the concept of preventative treatment, right? So it is better to maintain an infrastructure system rather than just let it rot into decay and collapse under the weight of usage. It's better to prevent climate change than pay for the cost of fixing it afterwards. It's better to have preventative medical treatment than wait until the condition becomes life-threatening and incredibly expensive to treat.
But and I mean, a rational person would absolutely agree, and we get our yearly physicals and things like that. But when it comes to a business, the bottom line for them is profit, and it would eat away at some of their short-term profits to spend money fixing what they could have fixed. And now they're out even like millions more dollars now because they just were like, yeah, fuck it, we don't care. And now there are people dead, and they're having to pay out even more than they would have had to if they just repaired it in the first freaking place.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, let us then continue on, I suppose.
Sure.
One inside this state. Many, including the governor, are quick to blame the utility company that runs power to the majority of the state, Pacific Gas and Electric.
This is not, from my perspective, a climate change story as much as a story about greed and mismanagement over the course of decades.
While recent investigations have found the company's equipment likely responsible for starting nearly 2,000 fires in the last 5 years, the search for responsibility has at times turned ugly.
Things are being thrown at folks. People's lives have been threatened.
More and more people across the state are living in wild areas that are also high-risk fire zones, called the Wildland-Urban Interface.
In 2012, about 15% of our service area, which is 70,000 square miles, was considered extreme or elevated fire threat. This year, as of 2019, more than 50% of our service area is in that elevated or extreme wildfire threat.
After the deadly fires in 2018, the company filed for bankruptcy, citing debt in excess of $50 billion, making the challenge of improving fire safety in a state battling climate change that much more daunting.
It's not all PG&E's fault. The state of California should have been cleaning this out a long time ago. instead of waiting until hell breaks loose and then blame it on PG&E.
PG&E calls this systems hardening. The idea is to replace the more vulnerable pieces of equipment, but also to keep the trees back a safe distance from that equipment. The company says by the end of 2019, they will have hardened more than 150 miles of line, but the goal is to harden more than 7,000 miles of line in the next 10 years.
That work starts in areas most vulnerable to fires. A large American gas and electric company in the unique and ironic position of citing climate change as partly responsible for the disasters.
We're out in the field doing stuff with CAL FIRE folks, and it seems like more and more of their job is environment, climate related. Is that true, do you think, for PG&E as well?
Certainly over the last few years, we've seen a change and unprecedented weather conditions and fire conditions across our state.
It's hotter, it's drier. Weather events, wind events, there's more of them. And unfortunately, with some of the weather that we're seeing and the winds, Mother Nature wins.
This is
Did something happen?
Sorry, that's just the end of the video. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So I think that there's a the idea that this touches on a broader issue. Well, the company isn't to blame for things going arse upwards because the state government didn't make them. Well, okay, but this is an argument against this small government mantra that I keep hearing about, right? Because you cannot trust private corporations to behave in a responsible or ethical fashion unless somebody makes them, which means that you need effective government regulation of what corporations are doing and how they're doing it. And so
the market will balance us up.
Yeah, the market will balance, and that everybody says you're right. You're exactly right, and of course it's fatuous nonsense because obviously if it gets bad enough for these corporations, they'll just declare bankruptcy. The shareholders will take all the money out, and then they'll start another corporation up that will plunder the available resources for as long as it can. And then when its opportunities dry up, they'll suck the funds out of that and move on. We don't have effective countermeasures against investors just funneling money into really irresponsible projects. And I
know this is going to sound, it's probably going to sound like really silly simplistic, but explain to my pea brain why we have people doing investments in public utilities. Like, these are services that people need. Right. These are not just elective splurges. Like, people invest in Gap because you don't have to go to Gap to get your clothes. But I don't think that there's anybody in a first world country that doesn't need electricity in some form. So you have shareholders running a public utility like a business. And then they, like you said, they declare bankruptcy, and then suddenly, they're off the hook to pay fines or take responsibility for their actions. It's freaking criminal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely something that needs major reform, not just, here, but everywhere. And I think it's definitely going to be a challenge, but something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I mean, I think for people's safety and their health and for, the wildlife and nature's sake, we need to knuckle down and really take it seriously and do something about it instead of just calling it difficult or it's hard because of money or because we got other things going on. Like, no, it's important. We literally live here. This is important.
There is no planet B.
Yeah. We don't have anywhere to run off to when this one fails.
Exactly.
There you go.
Aimee, I'm waiting for all of your stats. You said you'd printed out all these stats. I want to hear them. I'm super excited.
Oh, sure. I found some on New England and the Maritimes.
Awesome.
The climate has. It's funny because they do it in areas of Maine too. Specifically, the temperature for me has increased since 1895. So 125 years has increased 3.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is right around 2 degrees Celsius. We're expected to warm a total of 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a total of 3 degrees Celsius by the time this is all said and done. That's what they're telling us right now. That's, to me, is incredible. That's a lot. And it will be noticeable because, Maine winter usually lasts about 6 months. Now it's lasting about 5.5. So that's the average date of the last spring frost is now 6.7 days earlier. Wow. So we've decreased that by a week.
Bro.
Average date of the first fall frost is now 9.1 days later. So we've increased our growing season by that much. So a little over a week. So we've got 2 weeks of growing season now.
Right.
And that's now. So if it continues to rise like it is, it's going to be something else. We've had more drought, which for our area is really, really, really strange. Usually we get a drought, like when I was growing up anyway, we get a drought maybe every other summer or every third summer.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's every summer. We're always in drought conditions. This year it got severe and it's going to get worse. Been very dry, like you said, drier, longer summers. Winters are we're getting more and more precipitation, and it's not always snow. Like big rainstorms, ice storms. We're going to get more of those. I don't want those because 98 was terrible. Bigger because, of course, precipitation in Maine, we get a lot of snow. So we're going to get more of those big blizzards like we had in 2011. We had a blizzard where we got 36 inches of snow. We've got, drifts that were 6 feet high, 2 meters for those of you who don't do freedom units.
I don't want a blizzard.
Yeah, I know. I don't want one either. Try shoveling that when you're 410.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yeah. More wind events. We get them too now, more often than we normally would. Like during that storm in 2011, whoop, there goes my porch.
Yeah.
Blew out through the field. So we're getting more of that as well. It's incredible. We're getting more floods.
Wow.
More flooding because of more rain, more snow. All of that has to go somewhere. So it comes down the rivers. It swells the rivers. Poor Augusta, every time Water Street literally becomes Water Street because every year now it floods and we get ice jams earlier. We get them in February instead of March. We're getting, things like that. It's really... There are some times when you can't, we used to go ice fishing all the time when we were growing up. You can't do that half as often now as you could before because of that. It's just lots of things happening. And it's bad here. We think it's bad here. It's 100 times worse, like in places like California and in the very hot places. Well, like she said, she had that heat wave, 120 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right. That's insane.
That's something else. I mean,
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, I've noticed even just, here in New Jersey, we're kind of like right in the middle. We get usually hot summers and cold winters, nothing like super extreme on either end, but, pretty average temperatures. But I've noticed over the years, just, I've lived here my whole life. Things have definitely changed. I mean, when I was a kid, we would have blizzards every winter, there was always at least one big blizzard. There was always a bunch of snow. And over the years, it's gotten, worse and worse. And the last big blizzard that I really remember was maybe like 6 or 7 years ago now. And then since then, there's been winters where we have, decent snow, but nothing crazy. But this last winter was really mild. I mean, if we got snow, it didn't even stick. It was so bad, or it would just barely stick, like a light coating. We had hardly any winter this past year, and it was, just more noticeable and just an eye opener that, something is definitely changing.
Oh, definitely. And we've gotten the same thing. We've gotten, winters where it's like, wow, it's in the 20s and 30s, but it's never really gone below that like it can sometimes.
Exactly.
We've had winters, where 3 degrees Fahrenheit is like, we get a week or two of that. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of chilly.
Yeah.
I can't with base right now. We don't get those as much. You know what I'm saying? It's just...
Exactly.
It's different. It's been really different.
Absolutely.
Because I've lived in the same area and I've maybe moved maybe in a 20-mile radius. And so I've lived here all my life and I've noticed the same. I mean, it's a lot different than it was back when I was growing up. So it's
definitely noticeable for sure.
It is. Ocean temperatures are rising here. It's gone from 62 degrees Fahrenheit for the normal temperatures in August to now 65.
Yeah.
Those are rising. Lobsters are now going further out and deeper because of the water temperatures. They like the cold waters of the Gulf of Maine. They don't like the warm water. They don't like that at all. So they're moving further out and that too. So we're noticing that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never even thought of that. I'm sure there's a huge impact on the, marine wildlife and everything.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're more seal deaths now. We're seeing more on the beaches here. It's we've got great white sharks now, and we had they're coming all the time now. We just had our first death ever in the state of Maine this summer.
Wow.
From a great white shark attack.
Shark? Holy crap.
Yes, in Maine.
That's insane.
In Maine. Yeah, which is completely insane. That when we were growing up, oh God,
Yeah, I mean, we used to get maybe 1 or 2 shark sightings a year, and even that's gone up. Just with the weather changing and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, the same here. I mean, this was just right off of my town that we had that shark attack. So it's like, oh my God, keep that out of the water.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So that's how much the water's been warming, and it's huge for us. So, whoops, we have a super chat, please. I just saw it.
Yes, we do.
Right there. He's waiting for the chat to catch up.
Yes.
There it is, baby.
Renee and me for $5. Here's a tip for the pizza delivery dude. Get me Little Caesars.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
He's got his manners.
There you go.
There we go. Thank you very much.
Oh man. Well, it's definitely been a very eye-opening night, that's for sure. Does anybody have any final thoughts on the videos that we watched tonight?
Lots of knowledge, lots of things that we need to really knuckle down and take seriously and start to tackle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult to overstate just how risky this is. It's possible that the consequences may not be as dire as they could be, but the potential is extremely bad. And it would, if we avoid those negative consequences, it'll be entirely good luck and absolutely zero good management. It's just insane risk-taking behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And And also, PhDTony, Professor Phil Bell in the live chat wants to say hi to you.
Oh, hi, Phil. How are you? Well, I wanted to say that actually Phil's Phil's another one of the people you might want to talk to. I think he's moving towards climate change adaptation for India. India is actually one of the places where climate change impacts could be extremely serious. Within 50 or 60 years, 60% of India will be too hot for manual labor to be undertaken. They've already got something like a dozen cities that have really severe water shortages, partly due to climate change, partly due to poor water management. And at the same time, China is redirecting the Himalayan glacier runoff into dams that they can redirect into China. So there's a potential there if push comes to shove. And this is where the consequences of climate change can actually become incredibly serious, is when two large countries, both possessed of nuclear weapons, start getting desperate for resources, which is something we haven't really touched on here. But the potential for things to spiral out of control is really bad. But Phil Bell is, I know, is very active in helping the Indian government adapt to this. So it's great to see him. I hope he's well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we appreciate you being here too, Professor Phil Bell. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? And what do we have going on this week for the EiE Network?
Sure, I can take that one, please. We have some good shows planned for you. We've got Autism coming up on Wednesday. We've got next week's Pain of Progress from Steaming Cup of Reason. It's his turn next week, so that's a good thing. We've got, of course, the Silly Shill shows and everything, so stay tuned to that. Thank you. And I just want to say, too, that all of these things have been so eye-opening, and this year has really proven it. That's another thing that I read about somewhere. I'm not sure where, so don't quote me on it, but I did hear that more than likely more things like pandemics would happen because of the climate change and everything. So that's something to think about as well. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's something that I've heard, and it's something to pay attention to, I guess. So
yeah, absolutely. And Steaming Cup of Reason says in the live chat, it's actually Dick's turn this week.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Awesome. All right. Well, Cheesemondo, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Not really. It's been a really good show. It's been interesting just to listen to you all talk. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for running it for us today. You did a really
absolutely.
good job.
I wanted to thank a couple people between Cheesemondo and Colon and just the entire EiE Network for really stepping up and jumping in and taking part more. And these shows have been going really smooth. We had Mega Mirror on Friday. We had Poker today. We had the Silly Shill shows all weekend. Everything's been running really smooth, and you guys are definitely killing it. So thank you for that. And with that, I guess we'll say goodbye to everybody and wrap this up.
Thank you so much, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.